This conference will now be recorded.
If I click the F32, you will see this belongs to Information System Support Unit. And you will notice that, I don't know if this is correct though, but you will notice that the building is the government headquarters, it's the location of Kennedy Avenue, it belongs to the Ministry 31, program F300, sub-program F32. So, and it's on the first floor. So this is the information that you can tell it with the location, you can tell it the physical location of the asset, you can also tell it the organizational location of the asset. This field here, this just stands for active, and this is excellent condition, and this means it was purchased. So like I said, you can do all kinds of stuff with this. Now, this information gets defaulted into the asset. Let's take a look at another one now. Category table. Category table, the same thing. Now there's a lot of them here though, because I did, just for the presentation, I managed to do many of these category tables. You see building, you see computers, equipment for security, executive auto. So I'm just gonna pick one. I'm gonna pick computers. For example, there again, you still see it's a desktop and laptop. You can see it's a category of equipment. Category 1 is computer. Category 2 is the desktop. So all this gets pre-staged and get down at the very beginning. And again, you can, that's where you define the book. So for this type of asset, a computer, it has an estimated life of 3 years. Now, here's where you and your consultant need to decide what is the estimated life of some of these assets. It could be 4 years. I just put 3 years because I think it's more likely 3 years for a desktop computer, but it could be more than that. If you don't know, by the way, if you don't know what this is, what the estimated life, the United States government publishes they call ADR, and it tells you pretty much what the life is based on the U.S. government. It tells you what the life of the asset should be, but you don't have to use that. I'm just saying if you don't know, if you're not familiar what the estimated life should be. So again, let me do this one more time. So this is represents the category, represents more
Jose, if you're hearing us, we've lost you again.
is I'm working with this particular lecture company. This little block here tells me, it says anything that you see this ampersand basically says anything, no matter what it is, as long as the account is 15120, 5130, and so on, no matter what it is, it's going to come, if it's enter an AP, it's going to come into fixed asset. This is the asset integration. This is what it uses to bring stuff from AP to fixed assets. Just give me a second. I'm trying to.
Jose, you did break up there briefly, but I just want to emphasize this point in case it was lost on anyone with the loss of audio on Jose's side. So this is the key point. This integration rule is where we trigger, where we put up policies to say if something is entered in accounts payable on the invoice line, this is the accounting distribution that you would enter on the invoice line. If it has anything that's in this table, then that indicates that it also needs to pass this over for the additional steps in the asset management system. So we're not really expecting or asking anybody in the accounts payable system to do anything differently than they're really doing today. That's, I mean, of course, most of this, and you'll see this in the example from Stephanie shortly, it all originates in purchasing. So, in most cases, assets start off at least with a purchase order and receipt So we're not changing anything that in that activity. The only thing that's different is we want to make sure that whatever accounting distribution you would be entering on those PO lines that of course then get passed over to the invoice during the matching process, all of those accounting distributions, if they relate to assets that you want to track, we capture those in the table here, and then that triggers the workflow that we were talking about, that adds the additional step in the asset management system. So again, just want to really emphasize, and you'll see this in Stephanie's part of the presentation, we're not really changing anything you're doing today with how you operate purchasing and fixed assets. By setting up these asset integration rules, we basically take those normal activities that you're doing and divert to add an extra step if there's an asset that you want to track. Hope that makes sense. So I'll turn it back to you, Jose.
Okay, I like to show that right off the bat, since Paul just mentioned that. I want to show you how to add an asset. So it's going to be between me and Stephanie. I'll start off and then I'll pass it over to Stephanie, and she'll show you how the whole process starts in purchasing and moves all the way down to payables. So now that you know this is the integration rule, so any account that's here will trigger an event to send a workflow to fixed asset to tell them you need to add a capital asset and fixed asset. So now let me show you how that works. I said it's workflow, so you have to go and look at the workflow. I'm not going to do it yet because I'll do it after Stephanie does the presentation, but I want to show you what it looks like. Here I have two vehicles, probably from the same invoice, two vehicles that I can actually process and add it to the system. But before we do that, I want Stephanie to please show the process, how it went from purchase order to payables and to my to-do. Here's my to-do. When we're done that, then I'll show you the process of what it takes to add an asset that comes from payables. Very, very simple. Now, Stephanie, I'm going to stop sharing. Do you want to share on your computer?
Yes, I can do that, Jose. Just a moment, please. Okay, can everybody see my screen? Oops.
Yes, we can see you, Stephanie.
Okay, do you see the side? Is it grayed out?
No, we can see the whole thing. You're
Okay.
talking about the all
Because
the
I
way
have
to
a
the right?
whole, yeah, because on the right side of my screen, I'm just seeing a lot of GoToMeeting information, and I'm not sure how to get rid of it. Oh, okay, there it is. It's gone. All right. I think I'm ready to go. So to start with, when you're ordering an asset, you're probably going to be creating a purchase order. Now, I went back and I had a look at the notes that I had from when I was at the government of Dominica a few years ago doing an application review. And I seem to recall that you were using items, but you were not using vendor items. So I wanted to introduce a couple of concepts that might help you as you move forward and implement fixed assets, and as well to provide a little bit more control and oversight on how you're processing purchase orders. So what I did here, I started with this purchase order for Nissan for a couple of vehicles. Now you'll notice I have an item code, which is S1004. Now the interesting thing about this item code, if I drill down to it, it is noted to be a fixed asset. So this is really for reference purposes, and it's something that we could, or something that the government of Dominica could use to assist in reporting and consolidating any kind of financial or transactional information in terms of the types of purchases that you're making. So you could have items for passenger vehicles, you could have item codes for construction vehicles, and by virtue of this code, We can then report on how many vehicles you've purchased over a span of time, say, a quarter, a year, several years, regardless of who you've ordered those vehicles for, or what kind, or who you've ordered the vehicles from, or what kind of vehicles you have ordered. So this item is now tagged to this vendor item. And I know you weren't using vendor items in the past, so I wanted to just show you the kind of information that you can get here on your vendor items. So we do have pricing that's associated with the vendor items. The pricing can vary based on effective dates. So this is as of May 1st, your price would be $40,000, and as of say June 2nd, the price becomes $45,000. And this way the price is consistent. So if you have tenders or any of kind of contract pricing in place, you could set this up within SmartStream. So it's fully integrated. You don't have to set everything up each and every time you create a purchase order. And while this might not provide a lot of description for you, it's just telling us it's a Toyota RAV4, we do have extended descriptions which provide a lot of additional information about the type of vehicle that you are purchasing. Okay, so you get all of this fully integrated. So we have this on the purchase order. We have also associated accounting distributions. So to Jose's point, if we want to tag this as an asset, we know that this item, this commodity code, is associated with that asset integration rule. So when anyone comes into the system to create this purchase order, they can just come along, select the vendor item from the search up top here, and it will default everything into the system. There's no manual entry required whatsoever, except for the quantity of vehicles being purchased. And perhaps, I'm not sure if you're, how you're classifying your assets, if they belong to, say, one department or program, or if they belong to, say, finance in general. We can set up the accounting rules to bring up different divisions or departments, however you want to call it. And the account code will always fall into place. So from here, in terms of full integration, you can see that we have one line that is sent and one is closed. So we can also, from here, we can drill down and look at, let's say, receipts. So we can see on this particular line 1, we ordered 2 vehicles, but when we drill down to the receipt, we see that there is 1 vehicle received and 1 accepted. On this one here, we have, we've ordered 1, we've received 1, so it's fully closed. And then the beauty is when you take this over to payables, everything that we've entered here carries forward to your invoice. So from here, we can drill directly back to the invoice. And at that point, we're pretty much ready to do your asset integration. I would like to mention a couple more things, just going back to this purchase order for a moment. We have set this up. We've got all the accounting in place. Now, I understand that you use cash basis accounting. So this is also doing funds checking. So if you're budgeting for your assets at the asset account level, this is also tied into our funds checking. And if we look over at our line schedule accounting, you can see that we do have a funds control date of 6/1. So this has also gone through and ensured that you have the appropriate budget in place to make the purchase for these vehicles. So at this point, Jose, I can pass the baton back to you. And you want to carry on from here?
Yes, I will. Let me switch to my screen here.
Okay. Oops. And did anybody have any questions on the start of the purchase order process? All right. It's all yours, Jose.
Okay. Thank you, Stephanie. Okay, so now we are now in the invoice window. Stephanie did the purchase order and received 2 vehicles, and we're paying it right now in the payable system. There are some stuff you have to have in, before it goes to fixed assets correctly. One of them is this guy right here. You have to make sure it's one of those accounts that was in the integration rule that I showed you a second ago. If it is, it will pick it up. It will trigger an event and will send us a to-do. This other fixed asset documentation that would be nice to have that you might never see before, but there's something called asset information on this window. Okay, and this is per line. So you will see the company, the asset company that's going to, the serial number, the type of model, and the manufacturer. All this information that's associated with asset will be sent over directly to fixed asset. You don't have to recapture this again. If I went down, you will see the second line. You will see the information for the second line. Now, we already did this, so like when I started this process, I show you that I already got this message. And let's go back to that process now. So that process is the to do, and there they are, the 2 messages. So let's add these 2 payables invoices. Let's add them to the system. All you have to do is just basically double click, and it will trigger the addition. Now, here's the key. Remember how easy this is. All I have to do is define the location, define the category, and hit enter, and we're done. So the location, for now, I'm gonna select the road and engineering survey K35 location. And now the category is, I would consider this like a light truck. So I can go here and look for trucks. Here, light general truck, I would consider that to be one of those. So all I have to do is put in that information, and it will. Now the beauty of this, because it shows the location and the category, everything got defaulted in the base. If you went to the user field now, you will see that everything associated that I need to be able to do my work. The only thing that's missing is the employee, and I'm going to assign that to iSmith. And I'm going to, now I can go back and just save it. It's just a warning. It's just saying that my ledger date are not in sync, but that's okay. I just overrode the warning and it went in. So here it is. And it gave me a new asset number, and now I have an asset. And it only took basically 3 steps, actually 4 steps, because I added the employee ID. So, okay. Now let's talk about stuff that was pointed out. There were a couple questions that you guys asked me to show you how to do this. Okay, so I'm going to clear the screen, and the first question that was asked is, how does the system handle land acquisition? Okay, first thing you have to know, land acquisitions, a lot of people, you want to keep it on the system, even though it's a non-depreciable item. So I'm going to bring that up really quick here, and I'm going to do a search for land acquisition. And here's an example that I created. I use the government building in Kennedy Avenue as I just call it an acre lot. I don't know if it's an acre or not, just to show you. So you can see the category is land. I put an acre for the size, and it belongs to the information, which is probably not true, information system, and the cost of that land acquisition. Now, the key is what you want to know is how we handle this. What we handle is you have to go to the depreciation method and see how we flag this guy. We flagged it as a non-depreciable asset. That's how we handle it. And the estimated life land is 99, meaning it's not depreciable, it's forever. So that's how we handle the acquisition of land in the system. Okay, there was another question you guys asked, and I'll do that question here. Even though I have not taken any depreciation, you can still see the concept. The question was, how do we know the value of an asset? What I think Mrs. Thomas meant is, how do we know the net book value of an asset? And the system, you can know it two ways. You can know it online. We have a screen that shows you the net book value, and you can also do it through a report. So there's two ways of knowing it, online and the reports. Let me show you the online one. So you go here and resist a book amount, and you will see that book value, it happens to be the same as cost. That's because I have not taken depreciation. But as I depreciate this asset, this value will be reduced, because what happens is it be the cost minus the life today of the asset, this guy right here. Because since it's zero, it's the same. But as this grows, as the life today increases, the net book value will increase. You can also do this on a report. You can have a report that will show you the net book value. Okay. Now, there's another question you guys wanted to know. Let me go back to the beginning. Now, infrastructure. How does the system handles roads and buildings? And I created an example for that. Let me clear the screen. Let me start from a search again. Okay, I created two examples, 300 and 400. Let's start with this one. This is infrastructure construction on the road at Woodbridge Bay. There's a road that goes by there. The total construction would be, or not construction, would be more like upgrade of the road. It would be the 4K. This would handle part of that 4K. If you want to know what segment this one is associated with, I put it in here. It goes from, like in the US, we have miles, like this road started mile 1, and it goes to mile 100. So this could be like a segment of that road. So I put down kilometer 11 to kilometer 12. You don't have to do this. This is just my interpretation. And here's some information about the road. It's a road, it's asphalt. So you can see that. Now, that is not the important part. This is just like a normal, typical asset, right? But now, here's the key to this guy. In the depreciation method, I told it there was a reference. That means when I added this asset as a reference, he generated for me a property account. A property account is where the cost and the depreciation and the management of asset takes place. So please notice, let's go back to the asset. It's $500,000. And let me bring the other one in. Let me bring the other asset in so you can see what I'm talking about. Here's the second one. It's pretty much the same amount, $500,000. You will see also it's associated with a reference. It's a reference asset. So the actual pool of the property account itself is going to be $1 million. I did not create that. It was generated completely by the system. But let me show you what it looks like. So this is how the system, so the depreciation never happens here at the reference asset. The depreciation happens at the category. And for that, I need to switch over to the category. And I need to put in, and here it is. You see, $1 million. One of the reference asset was $500,000. The other one was $500,000. He generated for me automatically $1 million EC dollars for those segments of the construction. And all this got generated from the system. He even generated the quantity, letting me know this was the second segment that I was dealing with. So here's where the depreciation, the day that I take depreciation, here's where the depreciation occurs. Here's where the management of that infrastructure is going to take place. So that's the beauty of it. So you don't have to go out to the, you might have 100 reference assets. You might not have to go out to each individual reference asset. You just go to the property account that's associated with this reference, and you get the total money, you get the total cost, you will get the total life to date and the total year to date. So that is the way property accounts are designed. to work with in the system. This could be used for anything. It can be used for roads, it could be used for bridge, it could be used to build, for example, part of an airfield. Anything the government does in infrastructure-wise, these concepts can be used to handle those. Give me a second here just to get myself in order here. Now, the next question. Let's see. The next question you guys ask is how does the system handle reevaluation? So let me show you that now. I need to switch over because right now, if you can see, it says property account. Property account is a very unique asset. It's not the normal asset, so I need to switch back to assets. Now that I'm in assets, I can go look at a normal, typical asset. And for that, oops, I got a lot of stuff here because I forgot to put in there. So for that one, I need to look at this last asset. It's not, please forgive me, it's not a very good example in the sense that I'm dealing with a large piece of air conditioning here, but it's the same concept. You will see the book 1 and book 2. Book 1 cost is higher. It's a reevaluation of the original cost of 1,000. And to see this, you will have to go to the book amount. You will see book 1 originally was 1,000. The reevaluation amount is 1,500. So this is how we handle this process. And now, I think I have 1 cent left. I want before we show you projects. I'm going to go projects very last. Okay. I want to show you the power of the system as far as how you can inquire information out of the system. Let me use. I'm going to clear, and I'm going to go back in and bring this window open. Now, this window looks like a very simple window, but it's not. It's a very nice and powerful window. What it does for you, it allows you to query anything. Actually, it only shows you at this point, it only shows you the property record. So you can see anything associated with the property record, and anything missing can also be added. But the beauty of this system is if you know what you're doing, you can actually add net book value, you can actually add cost, you can actually add life to date. So when you add those elements to this screen, it now becomes a very powerful tool that you can use in conjunction with Excel to do your analysis and to do pivot tables. And now you're talking about a different world, because if you have the cost and the net book value and you have all the property information, now you can do all kinds of beautiful stuff with the system. So I'm going to go ahead and add the entity. So let me say, here's a question that I wanted to ask. I want to create a query that shows me the equipment that I have in the government. Okay, so to do that, I created a field called category, and I showed you that at the beginning of the presentation at the policy level. So notice that I did not define all the other fields. I could have, but I did define one as an example. So here's category, and now I can go and do a start. And I know anything associated with equipment starts with EQ. So I just put EQ in there and do a search. So that shows me all the equipment that I have on the system. So in this case, I have 8 assets that are equipment related. So I just quickly answer one of the basic questions: how many equipments are we owning? I could answer this question: how many trucks do we have? And on and on. So, but now I'm going to show you another example. I want to know how many assets are owned by Mrs. Thomas. Okay, for that I cannot use equipment. I need another field. So I'm going to delete that field and look for the employee field, and I'll bring that up. And now I will do start again, and I know that I'm using the employee ID. So her ID is DT. I could write the whole name, but it's not worth it because with that it's enough to get what I want. So I now do search, and I know that Mrs. Thomas has 3 assets and that are being assigned to her. So I want to see maybe the Apple. It's brand new Apple here, Apple 12. So I want to see what that looks like. And there it is. Now, I immediately noticed they came from payables. How would I know that? Because IN means basically payables or invoice. So if I wanted to at this point, I could just drill down and it will take me back to payables and show me when this particular asset got inquired. Well, something not quite right here. So I'm gonna leave it alone for now, but something went wrong there. It should have brought up the invoice. Anyway, this is because I copied the system from Smart Solution Server to my personal machine. So I probably did something wrong when I copied that. The reason I did that is because I wanted higher performance. I didn't want the internet to be holding me back. Anyway, so Mrs. Thomas got 3 assets, and one of them happens to be an iPhone 12 Pro, which is the newest version. So if I want to see what is attached to it, I can come in here and basically click on display, and then I can just go, and there it is. That's the iPhone she got. So now notice, please, that I just put an image here, but I could have, for example, I could have another attachment in here for the warranty. I could have another attachment. I could have 3 attachments, one for the picture, one for the warranty, and one maybe for the service contract. So it's an example of what you can do with the system. And the same thing, when you drill down to in the invoice, you might have all kinds of information on the invoice window as well. So like you can see, this is very powerful. And let me show you one more thing before I walk away from here. Notice that the fields here, a lot of these fields are all associated with the property account, or not the property account, with the asset record account, the property account of the record, not the book. There's no information of book here, but you can actually add it. I haven't added this in a long time, but I think I have done it in the past. So you can actually add the book information. And when you do that, if you had all the, let's say you had the cost, the life today, the year today, the net book value, then you could do something like this. You can actually go and say, select all the assets, and you say copy, and then you can go, let me see if this will work for me. Go open an Excel, and then you can just paste it in. See that? Now, of course, there's a lot of stuff here you don't want. So one of the things that I would do if you're implementing this, get rid of the stuff you don't need. Put in stuff that you really want to see here, so it'd be really powerful. So that when you extract the data, you get the data that you need to analyze. So, okay. So now, the last piece that I want to show you is I want to show you the drill down to project tracking or projects. Now projects, remember what projects is. It's a system, it's an application that you can tailor, you can make it, you can make, for example, the layout, the way the different levels of the structures, you can make it anything you want. It's, whatever information you want to hold, you can track it in the order you want to track it. The organization of the structure is up to you. I think at the minimum you can only have 2 levels, but at the maximum I think you can have a lot more. You can have 4 or 5. I don't think it's a limit. So depends on what you want to keep, what kind of information you want to keep in projects. You can design the project in like, for example, phase 1, and phase 1 could have consulting and so on and so on. So you can track all the costs associated with a particular phase of a project. The cost, the material cost, the labor cost, and all that stuff. At the end, like you will see in a second, at the end, it will just create an asset. And there's 2 ways to create an asset. You can create a brand new asset, or you can create a component, or you can actually update the existing asset as an adjustment. So you have 3 options: create a brand new asset, you can create a component of the asset, or you can create an adjustment into the new asset. So now let me go find that asset so we can drill down, and then I will pass it over to Stephanie so she can explain. Oh, I did it again. Okay, this guy here is wrote this two, actually came from projects, these two guys. I'm just gonna open up the first one. So you will notice that it's an infrastructure project. It got classified as an infrastructure project. That means it does have a property. It does have a property account. It does have a reference in here to reference, so it gets set up correctly like it should. So it's a good example of something that came over from projects that got interfaced into fixed asset. The beauty of this, this comes completely as you see it. I had to do nothing here. I did not have to even put in the location or the category. It all came from projects. It all was defined in project. And when they generated the asset, it just was sitting there just like it is now. And it has the link. So I can now link it and it will take me back to now I'm sitting in capitalization summary in projects. So at this point, I will pass it to Stephanie so she can actually explain the rest of this functionality. Stephanie, you there?
Yes, I'm here. Just a moment. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
I can see
Yes,
it.
we can see you.
Okay, thank you. So stepping off from where Jose left off, so we're on the asset, which has already been capitalized, and it's come through our project subledger module. So from here, I can actually drill down directly into the project. So we see the source document here is PJ, which stands for projects. So we can go down here and we can look immediately at elements of the capitalization summary that came directly from projects. So this particular item was capitalized on June 3rd for $125,000. And we can drill down a little bit further, right down to the project component, the commitments, the budgets, etc. So let me show you that. So we have the project component defined here, and you'll notice that although this component is for project management, it is a capitalizable component. So we're going to track it and ensure that we have those costs captured in your fixed asset system. And we also have an estimated amount that is included with that particular aspect of the project. From here, we can further navigate to some balance information. And what's really key here is that as we're tracking project costs, we can track them based on both monetary as well as statistical values. So if you're interested in capturing how many hours of consulting or project management you had, or how many miles of road you built, we could also track the statistical elements of a particular phase of a project, as well as the monetary elements. So for this particular instance, we've just tracked the monetary elements. And you can see here that we have 125,000 posted, which is identical to what we had seen earlier in the amount that was capitalized, right? Here we had 125,000. And when we go back to the balance, we have 125,000 in our actual. Now, the beauty of the project module is that you can actually have two different budget balances. So when you have a project that's being funded, let's say by IADB, that project budget that you have might span several years. And you might want to allocate that differently on the ledger side versus how you're managing your project budgets. So we can also look at our budgeted amounts for this particular piece of work for our project management. We have $3 million for the current year, and we've got it spanning over 3 different periods. We can also track our commitments. So in projects, we have a commitment balance. Now it looks like 0, but the reason it's 0 is because here in period 3, which is June, if we drill down, we can see that we have the purchase order commitment as well as our payment request. So the purchase order comes in, it commits the funds of $125,000 against the project, and then when the payment is produced, we reverse that $125,000, and that $125,000 moves from the commitment bucket to the actual bucket. If we look at our actuals here, we can drill down to our actuals, and we can see now that our actual amount of $125,000 comes directly from our payment request. Once again, we can drill down from the payment request or directly to the payment request. We can see the invoice that came through. Now on this particular invoice, there were 2 amounts that were entered, 125 and 140. So I could actually go back to the project and look at the balance for this piece of work, engineering services. But how is this all tagged? How is all this information interconnected? You can see that on the line of the invoice, not only do we have the purchase order information, which is right here. I don't think that's working very well, but we do have from site to required date. So this is how it gets tagged to the purchase order. And how is it tagged to the project? Well, you can see over here, we have a payable entity on the invoice header. We also have a project entity. Okay, so that project entity contains the project ID component and cost element. So this project ID component and cost element, these are the pieces of information that associate this invoice back to a particular project. So carrying on with our drill down, I can also go from line 1, I can go right back to my purchase order, or I could even go back to my project journals. This is fantastic because now you have full integration, and without going to spreadsheets or other reports or checking with other individuals, you have everything in one spot. I call it one-stop shopping. But let's go back to our purchase order. You'll notice that on this purchase order, we're also going to see very similar concepts. So to tag this purchase order back to the project, again, we have this project entity field right here on the left-hand side of the header. And if we scroll to the right of the purchase order, you can see once again, we have the project ID component and cost element. And this is a very strong control because once we set up the project ID component and cost element, there is an option that you can enable that will disallow anybody from entering any other UDAC or accounting distributions associated with that project. So that's a very good control to have. So this way your ledger is intact and your project reporting is also intact. And I want to show you that we also have the project being checked here in terms of, not the project, but the general ledger. We're checking for funds control here. So if I scoot over to my funds control balance, right, you can see here we have our total expense of $265,000, which should tag back to our purchase order here of $265,000, which is this amount right down here on the bottom. And if I go back to my funds control balance, right, we no longer have anything in the commitment or the encumbrance. But again, if I go back to the encumbrance here, we can see the purchase order coming in and then being relieved by the invoice. So we've encumbered the funds at PO, we've unencumbered at invoicing and transferred them back to actual. And here's our actual here, moving to expense. So you get the best of both worlds. We could actually have a very different budget on ledger from the budget that we have in projects, but SmartStream will allow you to budget check in both instances. So you could have a situation whereby you have enough budget in ledger, but not enough in projects. That will stop your purchase order from moving forward, or even vice versa. You might not have enough in ledger, but you have enough in projects. Again, the purchase order will not move forward until both budgets are adjusted and can accommodate that purchase order. So you're not just checking on the ledger side of the house, but you're also managing all the budgets for your funded projects and or internal government projects that you yourselves are managing on your own. And I think that covers it from my end. Were there any questions, or Paul, did I miss anything?
No, I don't believe so. I know I'm watching the time here because I know we started a bit late, and I imagine people potentially have meetings coming up starting at the top of the hour. We do have about 7 minutes left though, and we would be happy to clarify anything or answer any questions about topics we may not have fully covered, to your satisfaction. Were there questions from people that we could address now?
Hi, good day. My name is Lindsay. I wanted to ask a question. In terms on the asset entity policy window, there were all the different categories. Is there any way to include the depreciation type as a category?
Jose, do you want to take that?
Maybe you want to restate that, Stephanie? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I didn't hear the whole question. Can you restate it?
The speaker was cutting in and out a bit.
There were the categories as in terms of the physical location, the employee. Is there any way to include the depreciation type as a category?
The depreciation type is a category?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh,
There's a bit of a challenge with your speaker. You sounded quite distant from your microphone. Yeah, Stephanie, did you catch the question? Maybe you can restate it.
I believe the question was, can you use a category as a location, or a location as a category? I found it hard to understand too.
I think she asked for depreciation type of the category. Is that correct?
Or I wonder if you could type it in the chat.
Okay, 1 second.
Oh, you're clear
You're
now.
loud and clear now.
I'm clear now.
Yes.
Okay, I was speaking in terms of the asset entity policy. There were the breakdowns for the physical location, the asset type, order date, I was asking if there's any way to include the depreciation policy as a category on that window.
Jose?
No, I don't think so. The category itself, you're talking about the enterprise policy window, right?
Yes.
No, not on the enterprise policy. The depreciation type it's only handled at the category level.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no, that's the highest level. There is no way of determining depreciation type at the policy level. So at the highest level is category level.
Okay. Now I have another question.
Sure.
In terms of can you hear me?
Go ahead, let me see if I can.
Procurement of the asset is done through the purchase order, and then the invoice screen is linked to the asset management module. But a lot of our purchases are being done regionally and internationally, and it's not processed through the invoice module. How would we deal with that?
Let me make sure I understand. You're saying you already capture a lot of the information for assets in the payables module? You
No,
already have that
Some of it
information?
is not done through the payables module.
she's
That's
saying that a lot of the assets are not processed through from a PO, and you're saying also
and
from
the
an
one
invoice?
procured out of Ireland, it is not done through the PO module.
Right. Well,
But then you,
it's not a requirement for sure that you have a purchase order to create an asset. The normal jump off point is from the invoice. I mean, the PO is just really feeding data into the invoice side. But of course, we can load directly straight into fixed assets and, as well. And you know that happens, of course, when you're implementing the system for the first time and you're loading historical assets that have already been acquired. So the PO is not required, but it's a typical place things start. The invoice, is certainly where most activity happens, but we can go straight into the fixed asset system as well.
Because currently some of our purchases are being recorded not at the invoice level, but it's being processed through the unposted for the journal level.
On the journal level.
Yes. So would there be a workflow from the journal to the asset management module?
No, there isn't backwards from journals to fixed assets. The normal flow would be from fixed assets to ledger. Fixed asset system itself is designed to create journals that get posted in ledger. But is there potentially a way for us for those that are related to assets to actually flow through fixed assets? And then, again, we would automatically take care of the journal, because there's, several different fields, of course, that aren't broken out on a journal, right? That depending on the type of asset information you're trying to capture, a journal's, normally just a description, right? We would want to parse that out so that we actually populate the right fields. But we can load those in batch, just so you're aware. Just like you post a journal externally into SmartStream, we can also post a transaction into the fixed assets. And we do that as part of a normal conversion anyways, but we can do that permanently as well.
And I'm going to add, even in the interim, until such time that you actually implement fixed assets, I would still say you can start with your direct invoice, but perhaps you want to start considering using that that view of the invoice window to start capturing some of the asset information that Jose showed you that's available on the invoice. And as well, make sure that you have appropriate description. So while it might not flow to fixed assets today, if you start capturing that information today, we can marry that with your ledger information and then somehow, build an asset that we could upload to SmartStream assets. You're welcome.
Does that,
but just so you know, if you have information that are fixed asset related and we can recognize it on the journal, we can actually use that information to help us create a history of all the assets you already have. In other words, we can write code that will select and generate assets into the asset system based on your journal information. It's not perfect, but we could do it.
and we can certainly go back to your activity within payables and within purchasing, depending on where the best source is for asset descriptions. So that is still a good place to start when it comes to loading your assets still in use that you want to actually track in the asset management system. It's not like it has to be a complete manual exercise, is what we're saying. And of course, we didn't talk about tagging or barcoding, any of that, but we can support that as well. So again, if you want to deal with things, the usual things like laptops, desktops, office furniture, if you're going to have a process of capturing those, you could tag those at the same time, so that in the future, you do know what's in the system from the tag number. We can use peripheral hardware to print those labels, the asset tag labels, so that you can put them on those devices And in the future, if you need to determine, what that asset is, or whether it's part of a bigger group, one chair has a set of 10, whatever, you can use, handheld scanners to read those barcodes. And again, we can integrate back with fixed assets to see what the particular details are for that asset. Were there other questions that we could address? I know we're a little short on time, but we're also able on our side to stay longer. If some people do want to stay and ask, other questions, we're happy to stay on longer. Dillian, it looks like there's possibly no further questions. Did you want to make any parting comments before we wrap up?
Not really. Just want to say thank you for the presentation. I mean, it explained a lot and it answered a lot of our questions that we asked.
Well, we have recorded this and we will distribute the recording back to Dillian, and we'll provide our contact details. I think Dillian has pretty much everybody from our side on already, but if there are follow-up questions that you have, we're very happy to address those. And if in the case you do decide to go back and revisit the recording and additional questions come up again, please let us know. Dillian, sometimes these recordings are large, so sometimes we set up, a microsite that's dedicated to anything, for any given customers. So in other words, it's basically your own mini site that has any content like this, so that you can go back to it. I'll talk to our team and see whether that's the easiest way for us to host this for you. If that's the case, the benefit of that is it's very easy then if anybody missed this session who wants to attend it, or if you think, having seen this, you might want to refer others to it. They just need to log on to that site. It's essentially your site for anybody, registering in it to use it. So we would let you know, of course, whether or not, there were additional registrants to it, but we would set up the registration for everybody who was on this call, and it'd be very easy to add anybody else if you want to do that.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Efren, did you have any question, or do you think it meets your requirement for the asset management?
Sorry, could you say that again?
No, I was asking,
Oh,
Ed was if she had any questions or if the presentation today meets her requirements for software.
Yeah, I think Eva is in another meeting at the moment, so I think she stepped out. But
Okay,
we'll,
all right, thank you, Mike. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Ozzy.
oh, it's our pleasure. Our pleasure. And again, if anything else comes up, we're very happy to address it. And we'll have this demo environment with this data available for some time. So even if we need to jump back on a session to clarify anything with the real system, we're happy to do that.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you again. And we appreciate your time. Look forward to chatting soon.
Okay.
Take care.